Hey everyone, so welcome back to my channel. We're going to be taking a look at Zoltan Pozsar and his thoughts on what's going to be changing. And obviously by the title you can tell he believes that we're going to be in a very different monetary order, or some people would call it a new world order. And he thinks that the dollar is actually going to be much weaker, which is very interesting because the conversation of the dollar has been very rigorous. If you take a look at this chart, this is the dollar index, and this thing just skyrocketed. I mean, the higher it goes, it's basically more chaos in the world. If you take a look at the futures of corn and others like natural gas, these things are, you can see the volatility, you can see the sharp moves, and I think that maybe these sorts of moves might be more common in the future, but we're going to have to wait and see. But he thinks sooner or later we're going to be having a Bretton Woods 3. And for people that don't know, you guys should go look it up. It's basically a system where the world came together and decided how a monetary system was going to be so things can function. And they, how it started was with gold, where the United States will keep everyone's gold and they'll give them the dollar. Then it moved over to the dollar because the gold part didn't work. So go and take a look. There were 4 different times that really big things broke, and here he thinks price levels will break, which is really interesting. In any case, the problems with commodities regarding Russia is where he is concerned and how it affects the world. People have been talking about a global famine. We do see these relationship problems between companies affecting food bridges, which can lead to, basically war and starvation. Now, Zoltan Pozsar has been pretty good at predicting things, which is why people want to listen to him all the time. And, if he's right, and I think a lot of people do think he's onto something, we can all feel it and see it. This means that, are we really going to be doing this again? As humanity, is the world really going to really repeat bad things? But that's the wrong question to ask. The more better question to ask is, can we slide there? Can things snap over there? And if you look at inflation and all the other things, the answer is yes. If you look at how inflation and supply chains issues arose, it almost happened immediately. Everybody's scrambling. It's not just the U.S. It's literally the entire world. Leadership around the world understand that there's problems with supply in the future, which means problems with inflation, which means problem with the people. It seems that the shipping and container issue is still to this day not going to be solved, maybe till the future either. If you look at the yellow line, that's when the war started. And as you can see, there's a huge volatility of a crash and now an uprise. This is the part where it seems like the market seems to be playing chicken. We'll see if this is actually a bull cycle, but I doubt it. Anyway, since when the US weaponized the dollar, the ruble had a lot of volatility. The expectation was that they were trying to crash the currency, but instead it was the best performing one, I believe. And it looks like it might break out. Russia weaponized the commodities, which is why they backed the Russian ruble with it. And as you can see, the oil, once the war started, it had a lot of spikes, and we're back to okay levels. But since the yellow line, what happens afterwards? Are we going to be seeing big spikes up and down to the top side, to the bottom? It's really confusing. If you look at the vol index for crude, that yellow line and afterwards is where I think it's going to be changing. I think we're going to see some very interesting spikes happening, because oil demand supply is going to be highly mismatched. In either case, Zoltan thinks that um, you know he thinks that politicians are going to be a little bit more effective and influential. This is because that we're in a more of a wartime footing, and um, a lot of economic war and financial war, and these supply chains and heavy important logistics, not just regarding food and energy, but maybe military equipment. He believes that a lot of people also believe there's a lot of supply issues, the demand mismatch. There's not there was too much stuff, less demand maybe before, but now there's too much demand and very less stuff, little stuff now, and we're seeing very supply fluctuations. And I think I don't know if I said this before, but price up and downs are going to be, I think, much more, maybe more common. Um, but geopolitics are going to have a heavy influence, in very important sectors. And we a lot of countries are engaged in total country movement, but Zoltan sees that the U.S. is not just yet, and that these economic wars are going to really start to show in day-to-day life. Obviously, in Europe, they're having this a lot. There's a lot of Western sanctions on Russia, but when you take a look at the sanctions, it's very questionable because oil is still getting out, but in different ways. And this is just Russia that we're talking about. There could be many other big gigantic issues that could be happening. And do we need all these problems all at the same time? That's very debatable. Um, Food inflation, energy prices, he believes will be, it's going to be bad. Right now, maybe the CPI may have rounded, but has it really peaked? Or are we in a future where it just keeps going up and down? And I think this is what he's talking about with price breaking. If you look at our neighbors, Mexico and Canada as well are, they're struggling. But I think also if you look at prices, these prices all around the world may be going up and down. We have seen different countries where prices one way, like Venezuela, the inflation's really high. Turkey, that was one that everybody's keeping an eye on. And as we know, Argentina has been, dealing with really difficult inflation. And, a worst example is Sri Lanka, where it basically collapsed. This is a new world where the U.S. needs to work together, but how can we? When I look at the U.S., it seems that general mobilization to have the country work together is going to be it's not easy. We're going to have to wait and see how things unfold between the divide. But Zoltan believes that we're going to be having an L-shaped recovery. And if you take a look at the image, the L shape is basically not a recovery. And so the L shape has been, very difficult. And when a country goes through with it, sort of like Japan, they have a very difficult time to getting GDP back, like real GDP, and they deal with really difficult inflation and whatnot, and for a prolonged period of time. And different the Japan Central Bank and the ECB are kind of worried, because they're in very questionable positions. In these L-shaped times, the young people don't do well, and maybe that's why when we look at Bitcoin, Bitcoin is exploding. Crypto in general is exploding. I also think that maybe this is why the NFTs are exploding as well. People are trying to find any other way to get some freedom. Blockchains are on the rise, and as Zoltan says, this is totally a different world. And if this thing right here keeps going up, we're going to see a world that we never believed that we could see, or a world that we never wanted to see. And so we need to keep our eyes out and prepare. So that's it for the video. If you guys liked it, thumbs up, and if you disliked it, let me know why too as well. I have another one coming, so stay tuned for that, and I'll see you guys next time. And don't get too scared, don't forget to live, with your friends and family.